how can we exist as our truest selves yet in the environments, in the structure, within the systems that conditioned us to be this shadow self. So let's get into it. Hi, my friend. Observe it in your own life. In that interaction, what do you desire from the other person? Because again, there's always something that we want, especially within the walls of relationship dynamics, friendships, any relationship really, connections. There's always a desire. Like, what do you want from interacting with this person? What do you want from being close to this person? And what does that person want from you? So I think it's very important to just observe your own desires, observe how you show up based on your desires, observe how the other person shows up based on their desires in an interaction. And most importantly, observe and ask yourself as much as you can if your desires are truly yours or if they're being passed on to you. Is aligned with my truth or is it not? Is this a big deal to me? Because something that is aligned with your truth is really a big deal to you, or is it not? It's really how you move through the world. Because again, at this point, you are trying to stand on your feet as this new version of self. You're trying to embody what that looks like. And, I'm going to talk about embodiment in a bit. You really have to find the sweetest spot for you on your journey. The more you interact with people, and that's why I said every interaction, especially when the interaction is bringing those wounded sides up, that's an opportunity for you to dig deeper and use that to understand your own patterns, use that to understand the associations that exist within your mental world, within your mental environment, because suddenly you start to see that emotion as insight. You start to notice that feeling coming up, those thoughts coming up, those are insights, those are information. Now you have to take note of it so that next time when you're in a similar situation, you you can observe it closely. Your eye can observe and not attach the identity, because we know at this point our identity is changing. We are changing. Our identity is fluid. We are not who we used to be. So, how can we that are in this space where we're neither here nor there yet, but we know where we want to go to? How do we observe ourselves closely, gather enough insights, information, so that we move accordingly, so that we understand ourselves better, so that we master ourselves, so that we become because of our effect? And I'll talk about that in a bit. So, yeah, these are the two major things I wanted to speak about: was the society, the environment, and the construct of the society, and the groups, be it the smaller society to the large society, the connection that we have within these societies, and how there are certain roles, responsibilities, and ultimately identities that we have attached to that group, to that connection. And how do we then show up when we no longer are this version of self that is attached to that identity? The second thing being the societal structure at large, which is the world, and how the world is heavily a capitalist, for profit, economical type situation. And because of that, a lot of things are being brought to our desire, like literally in our faces. And so over time, we've been conditioned to show up in this way, and understanding that this may not truly be our own desires. And it's like, why would we be perpetuating actions? Why would we be showing up? Because your desires would be tied to how you show up. Why would you be showing up from a place of desiring something that you were conditioned to desire? So then, are you truly living your life? That's the societal aspect of things, and the societal reframing and framing of our needs and our desires in a way that we think we need them, in a way that we think we want them. And that being where control comes in. So if we want to take back our power, if we want to take back control, then how we show up tied to the things that we desire have to be from a place of our own truth. Now we take back control. Now, regardless of whatever is going on outside, we can choose to show up because we know that those desires are not coming from feeling a void, from not being enough, because we know that we are whole. So now we don't need those things that they're dangling in our faces because we remember that, wait, I never needed these things. So now you get to channel your desire, your energy, your resources into the things that you actually want, into your own truth. I wanted to talk about the different planes, reality, life, because there are some concepts that I'm going to be sharing. So understanding these layers, these levels, would really help us as we go forward. So first we have physical plane. That's the layer that we see. And physicality is the tangible thing. The human body is physical. Wall is physical. The chair is physical. We're interacting physically with all these different things. Like I'm sitting on a chair. That's a physical interaction. I'm touching the wall. That's a physical interaction, physical level. What we can see, touch, physical. Actions occur on the physical level. So remember the flow across the inner work elements that we spoke about. So we have the beliefs that contain or consist of the thoughts that shape our emotions, that shape our actions. So the belief system is deep, deep, is seated on that mental space. So that's the mind, mental. You can't physically see the mind, but you know that the mind has its processes, its inner workings. The mind is inside. You can't actually see it. You can't touch it, but you can touch the body and the body parts that you can see. So the mind is on that mental level, which is where your belief systems, where the processing takes place. And the belief systems is like that bucket that stores this, that contains the thoughts. So those thoughts, belief, mental level. When we also look at the theme of consciousness, we see that they are grouped as well. So they have a range, right? The highest theme of consciousness, which are within that enlightenment range, we have true freedom, lasting happiness, love, and inner peace. That's on the spiritual level. That's when you're no longer body, you're no longer mind. You transcend and you become one. You feel the connection. That's why you have unconditional love, because you now have that bandwidth. You've expanded enough to go back into the one. You no longer are divided from God, from the all that God is. You become part of that. You become connected to God. You become connected to the world. And you feel as everything feels. You're one. That's the spiritual plane. That's the spiritual level. Next, after that, you have the mental level, the theme of consciousness. That's where you have accountability upward onto understanding. And that's why understanding deals heavily with the intellect, trying to figure out the objective truth about a situation. So you're still within the mind space. And this is the mental level. And this is where you have your belief systems, because these become the understanding that you've gained, they become your thought patterns, beliefs, like these are in that mental space. Then the emotions, what you feel them in your body, right? But the emotions are still that in between space, I would say, because the emotions shape your actions, and the actions are what we see on the physical plane. So the emotions are, I would see it as that in between, it's inside, but it's also outside, but not really. It affects the outside. So it's in between. It's in between. Let's say it like that. So the emotions are in between the mental and the physical. The physical, which is the body, on that plane, you also can map that to the theme of consciousness, as in the wounded theme of consciousness, from rejection up until insecurity. When you're in the wounded theme of consciousness, you're still heavily in that abuser or victim mentality, that fight or flight mode, where you're still in your body because your body doesn't feel safe enough. Traumatic experiences are heavily felt in the body. So, in a way, you're still tethered to the physicality of it all. You can also look at it like even the traits, when we talk about the desires and these material desires, those are heavily based on the physicality of things. Survival mode. There were so many emotions, heavy emotions. So, in a way, those emotions didn't quite dissolve, are actually in the body. And that's why when you go through this process, there's a lot of release to be done. You have to release and replace, right? That's the third step in practicing the inner work. You have to release and replace. And how do you release? You start to heal. And as you heal, you physically release. That's why there's a, as a female, I don't know about the guys, because, experiences differ from person to person. It also differs across the genders. But as a female, there's so much emotions that have to go through. There's so much tears in this journey, at least in my experience. And emotions really are energy in motion. They just need to be moved. And we'll talk about that with the transmutation and, how you can switch from one emotion to another emotion. So far, they're on the same plane. And that's why I'm discussing these planes. So emotion needs to be moved, and there's a lot of release that goes on as we evolve, as we heal. This release helps takes focus away from our body. Think about it. If the emotions are heavy, and these traumatic experiences that are heavily laced with these emotions, they don't flow through, they don't pass through, you don't release them, they're being stored in the body. There is that focus on the body. It's like those emotions weigh you down, and literally it's like an extra pull. You have gravity, but then those emotions weigh you down, and that's where your focus is. But as we evolve, you move from the body and move up, it becomes lighter, so it no longer stays within the body. As a being, your focus, the focus of your existence, is no longer within your body. You're no longer in a survival headspace. Now you're healing. So you're more so in the mental space, right? So we see that as the mental, where you're focused on understanding, learning more truth, finding the deeper meaning to things, observing your circumstances, being aware of your thought patterns, like asking questions, understanding. You then have the spiritual level of things, which is connecting to the oneness, and you're no longer heavy on the mind, because now you see that even the mind is flawed. There is always a limit to the